Hey folks, so in this video we're going to take a look at the top 10 reasons I believe so many people are quitting the van life adventure or lifestyle. Let's get stuck in. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Elton, a 50-something-year-old traveling in my old Heimer, undertaking a van life long-term photography project of the UK and hopefully further abroad. So you'll see photography tutorials, and a lot of content from the road. Please do join me. Hit the subscribe button. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to provide my thoughts on why so many people seem to be quitting van life. Now, just to be clear, when I say van life, I mean people who lived or live full-time in their vans. I'm not talking about the weekend campers and the occasional campers who have a home and have built a 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 pound van to go and show off on the weekends. So van life, to me anyway, as I say, is about people who live in their van. That's where this whole term came from originally, and has kind of been bastardized on social media to become trendy. So yes, in this video I'm speaking specifically about people who have chosen and not forced into the van life lifestyle. So like myself, I've sold my house to take up what is for me a long-term photography project. That is my driver. And I will be creating a separate video about why I've chosen to take on van life at this point in my life. But I digress. So let's get to it. My top 10 reasons I believe, personally, so before all the haters get trigger happy with the dislike button, these are my views based on my experience over the last 18 months of living full-time in a van and having encountered several other van lifers and followed a few YouTube channels and social media accounts. So yeah, let's get stuck in. So number one, and I think this is a big issue, is people are basically fooled by social media. If you're to believe the majority of social media accounts out there about van life, it looks like a totally glamorous lifestyle where every single morning you're waking up on a new beach with a new bikini on, and just every day is a new adventure. And unfortunately, those people, if you dig a bit under the surface, you got to find out that the majority of them aren't full-time van lifers. There are these people, as I say, who have a van and use it occasionally throughout the year for their holidays, for their weekend breaks, etc. Some of them may well be full-time, but what they aren't showing you is the costs that are involved to be in a new location every day. So please don't just take what you see on social media for the gospel truth, because I assure you, full-time van life is not as glamorous as it's made out to be on social media. There are lots of ups and downs. Yes, there are the good times, of course they are. You know, you're not tied to a specific place, but there are a lot of problems that come with van life. So take what you see on social media, as with anything on social media, with a massive pinch of salt. You know, I read a stat recently that suggests that people take 18 photos to post one, just to get the perfect photo. So, you know, what you see on social media is very, very carefully curated. And you very rarely see the ugly side of van life. So don't be fooled by social media. Don't be fooled by what you hear from these so-called influencers. You know, their lifestyle is very different to most of ours, to be honest. So that's number one. You know, as I say, don't be fooled by social media. Number two is, I think, again, in a large part, this is down to social media, which is people just don't understand the costs of van life. So a lot of people assume and think that van life is a far cheaper way to live. And yes, in some instances it is cheaper. I mean, even for me, who primarily stays on campsites and has that cost of staying on a campsite, it is still cheaper than what I would be paying for my mortgage and having a home with all the associated, electricity, water bills and everything else that comes with it being a homeowner. However, it's not free. You still got to eat. You've still got to have your insurances. You've still got to put fuel in the tank. You've still got to, maintain your vehicle, etc. There are still costs involved. And I think, again, a lot of people on social media will make it sound like it's dirt cheap. And it's really not. Yes, if you wild park a lot, or primarily, then yes, you will save yourself, quite a significant amount of money, because at the moment in the UK here, you struggle to find a campsite with an electric hookup for less than £20 a night. You can probably find some sites at about £10 to £15 a night without electric hookup. So, if you are able to wild camp for a whole, for several months or all the time, then yeah, you're going to be saving yourself, £400 or £500 a month on that. But the reality is, if you full time, you're probably not going to be parking up or wild parking all the time. Unless you find a very secluded place somewhere in a remote area where you're not going to be disturbed. It's difficult in the UK especially to find a long-term park up where you're not going to be moved on, where you're not going to become an issue, where someone's not going to report you to the authorities. So yeah, that's number two. It's just people not understanding the true cost of van life. And I have made another video that kind of goes into van life costs and things, and I'll link to that up here if you want to go and have a look at that, to give you some idea of the realities of what van life does cost you. Number three, basic things aren't basic. So what you take for granted as a homeowner, simple things like doing your laundry, going to see the doctor, getting a dentist appointment, using the toilet, having a shower, basic everyday things you take for granted, I took for granted as a homeowner. These things are significantly more complicated in van life. So especially if you are wild parking, you typically aren't going to have access to fresh water. You're not going to have access to a shower. You're not going to have access to laundry facilities. So these things that should really be simple in one's life become something to consider and plan in your daily routine as a van lifer. Where are you going to have a shower? Where are you going to empty your toilet if you have a cassette toilet or something like that? Where are you going to get your fresh water from, etc., etc.? And whilst initially these things may not be a significant problem to you, over the years or over the months, they do tend to become, compiled with the other issues that van life can bring. So, yeah, again, I think, people don't really get that. They don't understand that it's not so easy just to make a doctor's appointment and go and see your GP when you're not actually living in a house or in an address or a fixed location. If you're moving around, these things become very difficult. Number 4, work and jobs or generating an income. And again, this is going to be down to your circumstances. What I would highly suggest to you if you're considering van life is establish yourself with an income before you set off on your van life adventure or lifestyle, because once you're on the road, it becomes significantly more difficult to get a job or to find work that you can do whilst you're still moving. Yes, there are several jobs out there that you can do remotely, and again, I've made another video on that which you can look up at above here. And despite making that video, and I think I gave 11 jobs that you could do as a van lifer from the road, I'm still struggling to make an income. I have my photography services and my IT consulting services that I provide, and it's a struggle. You've constantly got to play the social media game, and it seems to be that unless you are already established when you take on this lifestyle, when people learn of your lifestyle and that you're not in a fixed abode and all these kinds of things, it does kind of trigger alarm bells in their head. No matter how professional you may be, no matter how many reviews you may have, which I have loads of them on Google, on LinkedIn, etc., there does seem to be this kind of thought process of, well, you can't be reliable. How do we get hold of you? If there's a problem, you could just disappear. These kinds of issues. So yes, there are a lot of jobs out there, as I say, if you're willing to settle in one place for a period of time. So last summer, for example, I worked on a campsite. Great job, I loved it, but I had to be stuck for the entire summer on one campsite, which kind of detracted from the whole purpose of why I chose to live this van life experience at this point in my life. Finding a job that's truly remote can be a bit challenging, and several van lifers that I'm aware of who have quit van life has been down to this reason of constantly having to hustle to try and bring in some income, and not having that stability of an income can be quite stressful in your life, and then when you compound that stress of trying to generate a regular income with things like planning your laundry, planning your next park up, that kind of thing, it all becomes a lot for some people. So all these 10 things that I'm listing in this video, each one of them may not sound like a significant problem, but when you compound the 10 of them together, this is when the issues really start. And for some people, they just choose to not continue down that stressful path. My advice, as I say, is if you're going to take up van life, establish a business, or if you're self-employed, or have a job that you can do remotely where your employer is happy for you to do that remotely. Because as I say, once you're on the road, it becomes a bit more tricky to do that. Number 5, vehicle maintenance. So again, possibly down to social media and the fact that not many people are very honest about van life, is that a lot of people don't understand the cost that can be involved with van or vehicle maintenance. Now, I have a 27-year-old Heimer, so I'm expecting there to be issues with her because she's 27 years old. I've already spent a few £1,000s on her doing various things, redoing the upholstery, getting a bit of welding work done, putting a new alternator on it. But you've got to understand that if you're living in your van, your motorhome, and especially if you're driving a lot, traveling every day or traveling significant amount of miles on a monthly, yearly basis, that you're going to have issues with your vehicle. In my 18 months of the road, I've had 2 breakdowns already, at a fair cost to me. So you've got to be prepared for this. You've got to have money tucked away that should the inevitable happen. And I cross fingers that it doesn't happen to you, but look, let's be honest, it's bound to happen. If you're going to live any prolonged period of time in your vehicle, you're going to have some issues somewhere along the way. So be prepared for that. Understand that these things happen, and have a nest egg or emergency fund or a rainy day fund or whatever you want to call it set aside for should your vehicle break down. If it doesn't, happy days. But don't be caught out in a situation where you haven't prepared for that eventuality and your vehicle breaks down and you don't actually have the means to, or the finances to repair it and get it back on the road. And talking about breakdowns, I mean, one of the things you've got to consider when you break down is that you're no longer movable. You can't, your freedom has been taken from you. So what are you going to do in that instance? You know, where are you going to stay? Where are you going to store your stuff while you take the van to a garage? You know, these are all considerations you need to plan for, you know, especially if you're in a country or in a location where you don't know anybody. You know, it's not as simple as just going to a relative's house or a friend's house and staying with them. Fortunately for me, when I had my major breakdown where my motorhome was not drivable for almost 4 weeks, that breakdown happened near to a friend's house, and I was able to go and park the van up on their driveway whilst I waited for a garage to fix it. And that's that's another thing, is that finding garages to work on motorhomes, camper vans, these kinds of things is a bit tricky. And I've discussed that in another video, so I won't go into too much detail here. So yes, that's number 5, vehicle maintenance and or breakdowns, and just having some money set aside for that. Number 6, lifestyle changes. Now for a few people that I've followed and I've seen who have quit van life, they have had lifestyle changes occur in their lives. You know, when they set out initially, they may have been to a couple, for example, who then later become pregnant and are expecting a child and decide that they would want they don't want to continue the lifestyle, the van life lifestyle, with a child or a newborn. It may be that you become physically incapable of continuing the van life adventure. So for me, for example, I'm 50. You know, in all reality, as much as I'd like to do this, as long, you know, well, I am going to do this as long as I am, but the reality is at some point, you know, I'm probably physically not going to be able to do the traveling aspect as much as I'd like to. I might still be able to stay in a van, but just be in one spot for longer periods of time. But, you know, you may become ill, there's various things that could happen in your life. You know, a relative may become ill and you have to go and take care of them, for example. They are just, look, no one knows what the future is going to bring. So whilst you may start your van life experience with the full intentions of doing it for your life or for the next 10 years or however long you plan to do it, life doesn't always go to plan. And, you know, so that is another reason why a lot of van lifers do give up the van life experience, because something in their life has changed. Next one, difficulty finding free park-ups in the UK. Now, I'm aware that this differs between some of the UK countries, so England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, etc. In England, where I've spent the majority of my time, the 18 months that I've been living in my van, they are very against people wild parking. You know, a lot of the national forests and the areas of natural beauty, etc., they don't permit overnight parking, and they have rangers who go around and will move you on. A lot of the coastal cities, for example, do not allow overnight parking. The vast majority now of parking lots have height barriers in them to stop, you know, larger vans going into those parking areas and staying overnight. So it is becoming far trickier. Yes, there are remote parts of Scotland, for example, remote parts of Wales, etc., where you would be able to get away with staying a night or two. But with that understanding that, I can only park here for a night or a couple of nights, or there comes the stress where you're constantly planning your next move, your next park up, where, you know, there's always a stress in your head about, am I going to find somewhere to park up tonight? So in America, where a lot of the van life content comes from, especially on YouTube, it is far easier because America is a massive country. There's a lot of remote areas where there's just no one in sight for miles and miles and miles, and you can easily get away with, staying somewhere for a week, 2 weeks, however long you want. And in most of the national parks, from what I've seen on some YouTube channels, they allow overnight parking and staying in those national forests and areas. So if you're in the UK especially, don't compare van life in the UK to van life in the States, because they are two very different beasts. As I say, it's far easier in the US to wild park and get away with it than it is in the UK. A lot of people also, non-authorities, have a distinct disdain for van lifers and people wild parking overnight and stuff. And I've heard loads of stories of people's vans being vandalized overnight, windows being broken, the occupants being harassed, etc. So for me personally, this is one of the reasons why I stay on campsites, because I really can't be asked with all that headache. I've taken up the van life experience to have a more stress-free life, and parking up somewhere where there may be a risk of being harassed or my van being vandalized, etc., is just not something I want to deal with, to be quite honest. And some of you may think, oh, wimp, whatever, crack on. I really don't care about your thoughts and opinions, to be honest. For me, that's where I feel relaxed on a campsite. And indeed, right now, I'm actually doing pet sitting, which means I'm parked on people's driveways while I look after their dogs, cats, etc. during the day, giving me time during the day to go and explore the local areas, etc. So, yeah, just bear that in mind. Parking up in the UK, especially for longer periods of time, is not as simple as some people would have you believe. And again, down to social media, you see all these people parked up on beaches, etc., but they're only there for a few hours or for the day, and then they piss off. Don't think that these people are parked up there for weeks at a time or days at a time, because it's very unlikely that they are. Another reason number 8, people don't have a goal in mind or a purpose in mind for undertaking van life. Now again, let me just remind you that I'm talking about people here who choose to undertake van life, rather than people who are forced into it for financial reasons or whatever the case may be. I'm talking specifically about people who choose the lifestyle. A lot of people, again, motivated by social media or influenced by social media, think that it's a glamorous lifestyle, etc., etc. But then once all these other issues that I've talked about already start hitting in, they lose the motivation. And a lot of the time that's down to not having a purpose for undertaking the van life. They just want to be trendy. They want to be part of this trend that they see on social media. So having a goal is critically important to the longevity of your van life experience, and if you plan to do it for long term. So for me personally, my goal is my photography project, and that photography project is to photograph as much of the world as I possibly can, obviously finances depending. I'm restricted only by finances. Travel costs money. Cost money to put fuel in the car, except in the van. But that's my goal. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me determined to continue, is because at this point, even after 18 months, I haven't even, I've traveled very little of even the UK. So I know that there's still so much for me to see and do. So that's my driver, that's my goal, that's what keeps me focused, that's what keeps me going through the hard times, the difficulties, the issues I've just gone through. So if you're undertaking van life, or you're planning on undertaking van life, know what your goal is, have a purpose. Whether it's you want to see 10 countries in a year, or 30 countries in 2 years, or 100 countries in 5 years, just have a goal and understand how you're going to make that goal a reality. But just going into it for the sake of it is not going to provide you with the stamina, if you like, to put up with the challenges of van life. Number 9, sense of belonging. So, when you're a homeowner, obviously you're part of your community. You know your neighbors, you know the people in your street, you know the people down the pub. But when you're moving all the time, you don't get to set roots. You meet people on the campsites, or maybe other people that are parked up near you, or meet someone in a coffee shop, or whatever the case may be. But these people don't become your friends. These people are people you meet once and never see again, typically. So you never get that sense of belonging somewhere, and that can be a problem for a lot of people. And again, it's a reason that if you watch other videos, how I quit van life, why I quit van life, that is one of the reasons a lot of them will give, is this not feeling like they belong anywhere, and constantly being on the move, constantly getting to know someone and then having to say goodbye. So that again can take its toll, especially as the months, the years go by, is this feeling of not belonging and not having a community that can support you, that kind of thing. Again, this obviously depends on your personality, your character. Some people are very comfortable with that. They don't need other people in their lives, etc. I'm an introvert, extrovert, weird setup, where I love being social, but then I also love my own time. And when I was a homeowner, I would regularly have parties and entertain at my home. So yeah, when I moved into the van, the first 6-7 months was quite weird for me, because I wasn't entertaining anymore. I wasn't having friends over anymore. Every day was a day on my own with my dog. So again, this will differ if you're a solo traveler like me, or if you're traveling as a couple, or even as a family. If you're traveling as a family, you may not experience that feeling of not belonging as much as you do when you're a single person. And obviously, like I say, it's down to your character and your personality, and if you crave having constant interaction with other people. For me, at this point in time, I'm quite content. Obviously, I'm getting to meet house owners now while I'm doing pet sitting, so I get to meet the homeowners. I get to socialize with them a little bit before they leave the house, and then I get to socialize with them a bit when they come back. I obviously, when I go exploring, etc., I tend to chat to people and things like that. So that is enough for me personally. But other people may crave a bit more social interaction on a more regular basis. And then finally, number 10 is space. Now, after 18 months, I can tell you that space drives me insane, or the lack of space. And this is why I opted, my Heimer is a 4-berth Heimer. And I opted for something a little bit bigger, because I thought, well, look, if I'm going to live in this thing for a prolonged period of time, I would like some space. And she's not massive. She's only just under 6 meters long and 2.3 meters wide, which is actually smaller than a Sprinter long wheelbase. But even in that vehicle, space does become a problem, and you literally have to just have the essentials with you. So, you can't have a lot of belongings. You have to have a limited number of shirts. This is why if you go through my videos, you're going to find over time that I'm wearing the same shirts, the same jackets, the same jumpers over and over again in my videos, because I don't have a massive wardrobe of clothing, because you simply can't. You will only have 1 or 2 pots or pans, maybe 1 or 2 cups, 1 or 2 glasses. These things, you've got to downscale significantly, and space, it will start becoming a drain on you, because you, especially in weather where it's really crap outdoors and you can't go out for a prolonged period, maybe a day or 2 or 3 days, God forbid a week, which was the case recently, you will start getting cabin fever because you can't even walk around. I mean, you can walk 4 meters, well, maybe 4 meters down the aisle and return, and do that as many times as you like before you start banging your head on the wall. But space can be a problem for a lot of people. And again, if you look at these other videos of people quitting van life, that is another reason stated by quite a lot of them, is that the space just got to them in the end. You've got to constantly keep your van tidy, because just leaving a few things out just makes it look cluttered. And you know what they say, cluttered house, cluttered mind, or something like that. So yeah, just be wary of that. The space may eventually get to you. And again, this is down to each individual person and your personality and that kind of thing. But yeah, for me, it does get a bit claustrophobic sometimes, I suppose, especially, as I say, when I'm stuck in there for a few days because of poor or bad weather. And that's why I typically try to get out in the daytime, take the bike out for a ride and go and explore and that kind of thing, just to get out into some more open spaces and things. So I hope that's given you some ideas as to why people quit van life, if you're thinking about doing it yourself. If you have any ideas, if you've been a van lifer before and you've quit van life for whatever reason and it's not being covered in this video, please comment below, because I'd be keen to know. Because a lot of these things that I've rattled off here are actually also things I've experienced. Yes, I was initially fooled by social media, but I've worked in social media for over 20 years. So I know that everything you see on social media is a bunch of bollocks. And that you can't believe most of what you see on there. So I did my research. I went and checked out and tried to hunt down the more authentic van lifers out there who aren't afraid to tell the real story about van life. And I listened to them and I watched them and I followed them. And I was more prepared than when I hit the road as to the realities of van life. Well, I'm going to end it there, because otherwise I will just rattle off and off and off and off. So I hope it's given you some ideas, guys. As always, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and do comment below your thoughts on this video, because your interaction does help in the video getting seen by other people. Give it a like. It doesn't cost you anything and really would help me out. And until next time, be happy, be safe, and be kind. Cheers.